In this video, we'll learn how to use the 4 steps of art criticism to analyze a work of art. We've already discussed and learned about the elements and principles of art. The elements, being line, shape, color, form, texture, space, and value, are the basic components that make up any work of art. And then the principles, balance, emphasis, proportion, movement, rhythm, unity, variety, and contrast, are the way that we organize those elements in an artwork. Be sure that you understand these completely before you try to move on to the next step of analyzing artwork. Now, before we get too much further, I'm interested to see where you're at before we learn how to analyze artwork. So, write at least 5 sentences about this painting. We'll come back to this later. So the 4 steps of art criticism are description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. And you'll see this arrow goes from left to right. So we start with description, we move to analysis, then interpretation, and then evaluation. But what do those words really mean? Step 1 is description. This is where you describe the contents of the artwork. You're not using the elements and principles of art at this stage, you're just talking about what you see in the artwork. I like to describe it like if you were going to explain what was going on to somebody that could not see this artwork, what would you tell them first? What would they be looking at? So here we see a man dressed in clothes from another time. He's holding a sword. He is either struggling with or dancing with a woman who's also dressed in clothes from another time and place. There is a mountain in the background. There's an ocean. There are some rocks in the foreground. There may even be some sort of figures all the way in the back. Step 2 is analysis. When you analyze an artwork, you're looking at the composition. This is where you use those elements and principles we've been learning about to guide your looking. So the colors I see in this artwork are subdued. There's a lot of grays and some burgundies and some jewel tone blues. The sky has a tan kind of taupe look to it. I see a lot of movement in the way that the clothing brings my eye up, and the gaze of the man follows along the sword, which then brings my eye down. There's almost a circular composition here. I see a lot of emphasis on these central figures because they are the brightest in the artwork, whereas the background is a lot darker. I see a lot of texture in the rocks and also in the clothing. There's a good amount of space in this artwork. I can see very, very far away, so it's got deep space. There are several different elements and principles you could have talked about for this artwork. The next step is to interpret the artwork. So here you're talking about what the artwork means or what the artist was trying to say. This is when you can describe the story that you see, start to think about what the meaning of the artwork may have been, the message the artist was trying to say, what the idea could stand for, just the mood of the feeling and or of the artwork or the feeling that the artwork gives you. Sometimes it's helpful to know the historical background of when this artwork was created so that you can make a relationship between what was going on during that time period and what the artist may be, why the artist maybe created that artwork. You can also make relationships between art history and the artwork. Always have evidence from the artwork to back up your opinion. For this artwork, we see a man and a woman in some kind of embrace. For me, it looks like not a comfortable embrace. They do look like they have some familiarity with one another. It's almost as though they're struggling with something. There's definitely a lot of drama in this scene, especially with the sword and the way the sword is kind of pushed back to the background, and there's something coming through that cave. If we were to know the historical information of this artwork, you would know that during this time, Artists use romantic novels to be inspired by for their artwork. So this is actually inspired by a story, a romantic novel story, in which the woman was escaping an arranged marriage so that she could run away with this pirate. And here they're waiting to be rescued. But in the background is her father and some men that are coming to steal her back so that she can be brought back to that arranged marriage. And actually, the story ends with her getting shot and killed because, out of an accident. So it's a very tragic story here. But this artist definitely captures that drama. The next step in analyzing an artwork is the last step, and this is where you start to evaluate the artwork. This is when you make a judgment about it. Was it effective or ineffective? What is its value? Is it great art? Is it meh art? Do you like it? Did you think the artist did a good job? Do you love it? I like this artwork if I'm going to make a judgment. I think that it was definitely a beautiful painting. It's not my favorite, though. What I like about it is the way that the artist handled the landscape. I like the brushiness of the landscape. I don't like the very specific realism in the figures. But that's just my opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion in the evaluation stage. Okay, so now we have gone through the 4 steps of analyzing an artwork: description, analysis, interpretation, and then evaluation. What is the value of using 4 steps of art criticism when looking at artwork? And I'm going to read the statement that this person is saying, and you'll tell me which step of criticism is this. So, a tapestry covered table holds musical instruments, sheet music, books, lamps, flowers, an envelope, a lit cigar, and a fan. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? If you said description, you are correct. Here, we are listing the things that we see in the artwork. So we are describing the artwork. Let's try this one. There are many diagonal lines that move our eye through the painting. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? If you said analysis, you are correct. Here we're talking about the elements and principles that we see the artist using in this artwork. The contrast of the bright white paper in the center creates emphasis to that spot. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Again, here we are looking at analysis. We are thinking about those elements and principles that were used in this artwork to make it successful. The contents of the table suggest that the person who owns these objects enjoys music, reading, and is wealthy. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Here we're interpreting the meaning of the artwork. We're wondering why all this stuff is put together and thinking, well, probably it's because this person enjoys these things. That's why this still life was created for this person. So we're interpreting the meaning of the artwork. The artist is skilled at creating a realistic effect. It looks like we could reach out and grab the items from the table. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Here we are evaluating what the painting's value is, right? How good the artist was, whether we like it. We're saying that the artist is skilled at creating a realistic effect, right? We're making a judgment about the quality of the artwork. Okay, let's try another artwork that maybe you've seen before. The colors and lines of this artwork make me feel sad. The swirls remind me of the way my chest feels when I am anxious. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, evaluation? This one's a little bit tricky, right? Because they talk about colors and lines, which would be part of analysis, but then they're also saying how the artwork makes them feel. So this is more of an interpretation of the artwork. It's not just looking and describing the elements and principles, it's talking about the meaning behind the interpretation, so the feeling that the artwork gives the viewer. This is my favorite painting. It's so beautiful. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Evaluation. So here we're just saying, I'm judging this artwork and I love it. It's beautiful. It's my favorite. I would say that the better way to evaluate this, though, would be to use specific examples from the artwork. So instead of "it's so beautiful," maybe the way the artist painted the sky is so beautiful. It's very specific from the artwork. The lines flow up from the cypress tree through the swirls in the sky, then back down to the mountains, which then return to the cypress tree. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? This is another one that's kind of more than one, right? So the person is describing the artwork by saying that there's a cypress tree and there's sky, there's mountains. But I would say that this is more of an analysis of the movement in the artwork, right? So they're saying that the lines that flow through those move my eye around the painting. I want to buy a poster of this and hang it on my wall. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Definitely evaluation. Not a very good example of evaluation. Remember, always include evidence from the artwork. Last one. There are 4 guys sitting around a table. They are gesturing with their hands. One guy is able to stand up. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, evaluation? This is a description. We are talking exactly about what we see in the artwork. We could have also included there's bread on the table with some apples. There's an interesting chair in the foreground. There's a tablecloth. I can tell this was painted in the Baroque time period because of the light lines and scruffy people. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, evaluation? This one was also a little tricky. They talk about lines and they talk about the scruffy people, right? Which is kind of description, kind of analysis. But when they compare it to another art historical time period, the Baroque time period, that means that they are making an interpretation, right? They are deciding what time period the artwork falls into. So the answer for this one would be interpretation. The guys are disheveled looking. They have mismatched clothes, holes in their sleeves, and they are not clean shaven. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? Here's another example of description. However, this kind of description may help you when you're trying to make an interpretation of the artwork, when you're trying to find out the meaning. Because once you start thinking about why are they wearing mismatched clothes with holes in their sleeves and are not clean shaven, what does that tell me about these people? That helps you with the interpretation of this artwork. The artist used foreshortening to make it look like the limbs are coming out at us. Which step of art criticism is this? Description, analysis, interpretation, or evaluation? This would be an analysis. This is where you're looking at how the artist created the artwork using those elements and principles. So foreshortening is a way of creating space in an artwork. The more art vocabulary you know, the easier it is to analyze artwork. All right, so we've gone through some examples of how to do description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation. Let's come back to this painting that we started with. Try writing about this painting again, except this time, write one sentence for each of the 4 categories of art criticism.